Christy Zito is she's going to be a candidate next year for Idaho State Senate. She currently serves in the Idaho House of Representatives, and she's joining us this morning. Her district encompasses Elmore County, Owyhee County, and parts of Twin Falls County. We're at 8:43. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. The number to reach the candidate or the sitting representative is 208-736-0300, 208-736-0300. Quickly, I had mentioned in this column I wrote the other day, and you're probably among the dozen people who actually read it. And look, if we put up a column, somebody puts up something on our website that says, hey, here's a guy mowing his lawn. He looks like David Crosby. 1,000 people look at it. If you put something up with a little depth, 12 people look at it. But those 12 people, on the other hand, probably are the biggest movers and shakers in this part of the state. But I said, I thought that perhaps the Liberty caucus and I don't know if that's technically probably not really even the name, but the caucus that you're part of among the Republicans in the legislature, maybe aren't all that far apart from what we often describe as the establishment Republicans. It just seems to be sometimes you butt heads on a few issues.
Well, I think that's the way politics in general is to a large extent. I mean, there are some places where with some other representatives, there's a big divide. But generally, I really honestly believe that most people care about our state. They want to see our liberties preserved. They want to see, at least in Idaho, still as little government interference as possible. I just don't think it's right that when a person goes to do something, the first thought that they have to think is, well, now, am I going to get arrested? Am I doing this wrong? Um, you know, are the code enforcers going to come after me? Because those are the freedoms that we enjoy. Those are the freedoms that generations of Americans have fought for, and many people have given up their lives for, so that we can live free and independent. I have a quote here. I want to find it. It was from a guy I heard on the radio the other day. I think his name is Bill Colley. He's out of that Twin Falls area, and he said, "Liberty means the choice to do things." And I really like that quote, Bill. In fact, I'm going to print it off and hang it on my wall because I think it's pretty profound
I
because
guess
it
you really aren't all
basically.
that angry.
No, I'm not angry at all. Because like I said, if you support me, it's because not because you agree with me 100%, but because you feel like I represent your voice. But I like that quote, so I'm going to put it on there. And in the state of Idaho, I believe for the most part, generally, people still believe that, and legislators still believe and work towards that. There's a few that don't. There's a few that don't, and there always will be.
I'm in historic company now because your predecessor once, when he was on the air with me, quoted Eleanor Roosevelt.
Oh, there you go.
She will be remembered a lot longer than I will. Uh, we were talking in the break about property tax issues, and it's been a contentious thing in Twin Falls County. I was just reading a couple of weeks ago in Ada County. Goodness gracious, the people there, I mean, are waking up and suddenly saying, "What's happened?" Because these changes have just almost whipsawed people. But even in your district, because if you look around Mountain Home, for instance, all of that development, and that means the value of property goes up, but that means then your valuation of that property goes up, and we're dealing. It may not be crisis level yet, but it seems we could be headed that way.
Well, if it affects you, it is crisis level. And there are people who have worked all of their lives, paid for their homes, and they still don't own their home. Because if the government can come and take it away from you because you don't pay your taxes, you don't really own it. You're a tenant. And, California doesn't very often maybe do things that would be what we would consider good. But I believe it was Proposition 13 made it so that whatever the tax level is when you purchased your property, it stays there until you sell it. Now, for agricultural property, Utah has a similar thing. They call it the green belt. So if you buy a piece of farm ground and you put it in the green belt, your property taxes are considerably lower, and they stay that way, except Utah does have a recapture clause so that if you do sell it for commercial development, then I think they can go back and recapture 5 years. I don't think it's right that you work all of your life to pay for your property, to pay for your home, and then when it's time for you to retire and you're on somewhat of a fixed limited income, your property taxes can continue to go up and up and up. And there are a lot of people who actually have to sell their homes because they can't afford to pay the property taxes on them. There are people who have to sell vacation homes, cabins, for example, that have been in families for generations. but they have to sell them because of the property taxes. And I just don't think that's right. And a lot of people don't think that's right. You've worked for your home. In theory and constitutionally, it should belong to you because we all know that the pursuit of happiness line in our Constitution referred to the ownership of property. And that's a constitutionally right, God-given guarantee. And the government should not be able to come in and take it away from you because of a tax issue.
I believe you've got a caller. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air at 848 with State Representative Christy Zito.
Good morning.
Good morning.
She sounds like a wonderful lady. I don't know her, but when you were talking about the population explosion, the interesting part about Owyhee County is the East End and the part of Twin Falls County is owned mostly by Simplot, and it's for range, and that I don't think that will be developed in our lifetime at least. But I spent some time on Hot Springs Road in Bruno, and the old Tom Hall told me, if you ever drink out of the Bruno River before you're 10 years old, you'll never be able to get the hell out of here. And I didn't drink out of it. I made sure I didn't drink out of it. But that's a lovely country, and they're great people. And the best part I like about it, I got the same voting right as Scott Simplot does.
Exactly.
I got one vote, and he's got one vote. So,
and it is beautiful country.
You, and you have a lovely day.
Thank you.
I want to thank the caller for chiming in today. That is likely. I don't think Owyhee County will ever be developed like what we've seen anyway, because of just the nature of it. I mean, it's just that it's somewhat dry, obviously, and I don't see how anyone, because just where you'd have to build roads and the like. When I went out to Bruno Canyon the first time, and to get there, I don't see anyone laying down a great big 4-lane road through that area. It's not going to happen.
No, it's beautiful country, and a lot of it is private owned. And then again, like much of the state of Idaho, a lot of it is under federal management and state control. And so those areas probably won't be developed as heavily as areas like closer in. And then that's just the way development happens. I mean, we see it all over. We call it the good farm ground goes first. And you can actually see it like in the Meridian area and on Eagle Road and stuff. When I first moved here and my son was playing baseball, we would go to some of these schools in the Meridian area and stuff, and there would be sod farms and cornfields and pumpkin patches. And now there are housing developments and stores and shopping malls. It's just changed. And we tend to build where, I guess basically, when it comes right down to it, it's where the water is available. Because, if you're going to have a city and you're going to have development like that, you have to have water. And so you go out in the Owyhees, and it's probably not as easy to get the amount of water and to get a pipeline and the infrastructure in as it is like down on the flat in the valley.
When you were referencing property taxes and tying them into what, that valuation was of that property when you first purchased it, was that it?
Yes.
Do you see any potential support for that in the legislature?
I would like to find out. I would like to run a bill like that. There's a couple of representatives that typically carry tax legislation. I would like to talk to them. I know it's been talked about a little bit, but I think some action needs to be taken on it, especially now, especially with things the way they are. And I would like to see it be retroactive, because I just don't want our seniors to have to sell their homes. Because then after you sell your home, then where do you go and what do you do? And at 65, 70, 80, my stepdad's 86 years old. I mean, how do you start over? And why would you have to start over? Why should you have to start over? Why should you have to sell your home because of the property taxes on it? So if we do something like that and we go back to a property tax valuation based on what the purchase price was at the time, and we would have to have somebody who does numbers to look at it. Maybe there would be some adjustment for inflation or something like that. We would just have to sit down and take a good hard look at it. But there needs to be a protection there.
I had a call a couple of months ago. We were having a conversation, and we got a call from a fellow in Twin Falls who I think he paid $60,000 for his house. It's now, they say it's valued at $210,000. And so what he used to pay on probably home valued at $60,000 versus $210,000, and it is difficult for him to stay in that house.
Well, it is. And then, Bill, we all know that that property values are relative. I mean, somebody can come in and look at that house and say, oh, it's worth $210,000. We would appraise it at that, but that doesn't mean you'll sell it for that. That doesn't mean that that's what you'll get on the market. And just because properties are selling really fast and really high today, that doesn't mean that 6 months from now it will. That doesn't mean that the market will stay like it is. We all know, and we've seen historically, and we've watched happen time after time after time, the real estate bubble eventually pops. It doesn't ever stay up. So, those values are relative, and whatever it is and whatever it ends up looking like, we need to protect the right to own property. We need to protect the people who have spent their whole entire life investing in their homes, investing in their lands, so that they don't have to sell them just because of that.
We've got another caller. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air with State Representative Christy Zito. Go ahead. Oh, I think our caller decided to bail out. 208-736-0300. 208-736-0300. You got to make it quick if you want to get in, because we're coming up near the end of this hour of the program. Just very quickly, I have an email from one of your colleagues. Actually, we were talking about her during one of the breaks. The Energizer Bunny from up in North Idaho. And she sent out a weekly email about the legal certificate of live birth document. About different genders. I hope we're not going to get off on that track next legislative session.
Well, it's an IDAPA rule, and it will be discussed. When I've discussed this issue with being able to go in and change your identity on your birth certificate, when we ended the session last year, one of the documents that I saw mentioned that there could be as many as 54 to 56 gender identities. As I read through the list, I'm not completely sure I understand exactly what that entails and how that's determined, but it's by how maybe you identify at that moment. So as I've discussed this with law enforcement, there seems to be a problem there. So on your birth certificate or your driver's license or your identification, if it lists you as a male or a female, and then let's say you commit a crime and law enforcement has to come looking for you, but you decided to go in yesterday and change your birth certificate from being a man to identifying as a female, but now law enforcement is still looking for a man, but on your legal documents it says a female, we could have some challenges and problems there. I don't know whether the answer is to just take it off and not have that on our documents or what, but these are one of the social issues that I believe it's value based. You're one of two genders when you're born. Sometimes there are some things. When my one granddaughter was in the hospital, there was a child there who was born with both sets, and I've never seen parents agonize over anything, and I felt so bad for them because they had to decide. It was going to be their decision if that child should be a boy or a girl, and that was a heart-wrenching, very, very hard decision for those parents.
We've got a caller. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Good morning. I want to compliment Representative Zito for her stand against those that would put down constitutional conservatives like yourself. And I think one of the issues that concerns me the most is that the students that we're turning out of our public schools here in Idaho have very little comprehension of the greatness of America and understand the Constitution very well. And I think that it's sad that we're turning out socialist and radical green environmentalists out of our schools. So I'd like her to comment about that.
Sure, she's got about 90 seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, I agree. When we look at education and we look at the Idaho State Constitution, education that the state is supposed to pay for is defined as, according to the Times and according to the dictionary, that would be first grade through 8th grade and sometimes maybe 9th or 10th. Now, our higher, I'm not even sure how to say this, but we are seeing in our colleges and our universities, it seems to me that they are spending more time worrying about gender identity, worrying about all of these other different issues, rather than making sure that we are turning out job-ready people. We're not constitutionally bound to fund any university except for our ag university. I'm not saying that we should cut funding out altogether. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is I think it's important that these places get back to the job that they're supposed to do. It's their job to turn out job-ready people. It's their job to educate us, to further our education in that course of study that we choose. We're not going there to learn about gender identity. We're not going there to learn about all of these different social issues. We're supposed to be making people ready to work.
We've got to wrap this up, but quickly, do you have a website up for campaigning yet?
Well, my website's always been up. It's christyzito.com, and you can go there and you can contribute, or you can read about the issues, or you can make a statement or submit questions. And my phone number's out there everywhere. If you ever have a question, if you ever have anything you want to talk about or discuss, leave a message if I don't answer the phone, and I'll get back to you.
Okay. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you, Bill.
9 o'clock news coming up in just a moment on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com.